Yo, what is up, everyone? It is Spicysushi. And again, we have a League Starters tier list yet again for a new league. This league, I decided to make the list ranking builds based on how I think they will perform with the new league mechanic, because the way I was thinking of League Starter tier list was that usually people rank them like based on how they will just perform in general in a PoE league start, and that is definitely fair. I just wanted to keep it simple in terms of like ranking, so don't be offended if you see a build rank lower than others. I wanted to rank them based on how they're going to perform with Breach 2, because I feel like most people that come to play a Path of Exile league, they're not the kind of player like me that just plays a league no matter what. Even if the league mechanic is completely terrible, but the base game is good, I will play the hell out of a Path of Exile league, right? But most people that I know, most of my friends that play Path of Exile casually, the only reason they're coming to play a Path of Exile league is to try out the new league mechanic. So I wanted to rank my starters based on my opinion on how they will perform on a league start budget with Breach 2 in Keepers of the Flame. And so, keep that in mind. I do have assumptions that I'm ranking these builds based off of. I am assuming that Breach is not going to be a total pushover, especially considering they're porting over the monsters. I know they said they are just porting over like the monster models and maybe some stuff from PoE 2, but either way, I am going to assume, since these are like larger models of monsters, they look a bit juicier, look a bit meatier, I feel like they're going to be a little bit tanky. I think they're going to be not a massive pushover that you can just roll over, because, if Breach 2 is a complete pushover, you're just blasting them, destroying the entire screen, no problem. They're not nuking you, they're not doing much damage, they don't have crazy on-death mechanics like the PoE 2 ones do. Then obviously Kinetic Blast, Deadeye is going to just be an absurd build, best build in the game, as well as other squishier, like super good mapper builds like Lightning Arrow, like Venom Gyre, like Exsanguinate Mines. Obviously that could be a thing, but what I'm basing my assumption off, I'm assuming that Breach 2 is going to be a little bit difficult early on a budget. It's not going to be something you can roll over, which is what I've tiered the builds off of. And so that's how I'm going to go into starting with S tier. S tier, I think slams are really, really good for this. They are very tanky on a budget. They are pretty fast on a budget. Obviously not as fast as like Deadeye, but they're pretty fast with Leap Slam, and they do really, really good damage with pretty easy to acquire weapons and easy to acquire gears, with a lot of power also coming from their ascendancy and the passive tree themselves. Last league, this was the same. Slams were very, very solid, and they're going to be solid again. Now, the difference between Earth Shatter Berserker is you are going to have faster attack speed, you're going to have really, really high damage, and you are going to press like one Warcry that is double exerted. I mean, well, I'm going off of imexile's guide. He has one Warcry that he's pressing. You can press more. There's also like an offhand swap Warcry that you can do. It's up to you. It's very customizable, like he says. Karn also has a guide you can check out, but he will be pressing a lot of Warcries. So if you're wanting to sweat a bit, that is who you want to look for, but he is Slayer. Bleed Slams. I honestly, when I hear Bleed Slams, I don't think of it as tier build. I'm going to be honest. Maybe I'm biased because when I think Bleed Slams, I think Quinn. So I immediately think it's probably not going to be a super high performance build, but then I watched PhazePlays build guide, and that build looks like an absolute blaster. It presses one Warcry. It's not double exerted because it's not a Berserker, but it still looks really comfy on a Slayer when you're just pressing one. And the AoE is insane. And I really am biased towards like dot playstyles where you can just throw down a slam and dodge mechanics. You don't have to focus as much as DPS uptime. I mean, you do a little bit, but it's not like, super sweaty. And it looks really good. I recommend you check out his build guide if you're wanting to try something a bit different as opposed to, regular slams. I think it looks really, really solid. Now, going into the A+ tier, the only reason I don't have some of these builds in S tier, I had to separate them, is because if Breach is actually pretty hard, I think Deadeye is going to struggle a little bit early. Not a lot, but a little bit, and it's not going to be super comfy. I think there's going to be some deaths. I think it's going to be, it could be really hard even if the monsters are super overtuned. I hope they aren't. I think GGG's learned at this point to not crazy overtuned monsters. We've gone through years of pretty bad patches with that, so I'm pretty hopeful, but I think they won't be a pushover. So Kinetic Blast, super fast, amazing mapping, very solid damage, crazy buffed with this league. So that is something to look out for. If you are, if you're going to follow a Fubgun build, you know what you're getting into, right? I mean, you're going to play a map blaster that is a little bit squishy, but has really good scalability and a good build guide. So I don't think you have really anything to worry about as long as you know what you're getting into. Now, Poison Concoction of Bouncing. As usual, really strong league starter. It's been really strong for quite a while. I do recommend you checking out build guides and watching the gameplay. It's something that you'd be into doing because it is maybe an acquired taste for some. poison builds and PConc in general. You know, usually you start poison concoction and then you transition into the next build like Mamba or poison penance brand for bossing. Like I have 2 examples here for you. Mamba looks very solid for mapping, and it looks pretty doable if you want to before PConc. Honestly, I've looked at poison concoction POBs, and it looks way stronger just to play that as long as you can until you start running out of fumes. Like, you know, you start running low on fumes or something, and you're like, all right, I got to do something different, and I have the currency to swap. I'm gonna do it. But Crouching Tuna is gonna be starting Mamba from campaign, so it's pretty interesting. I looked at the POB; it looks pretty solid as long as you know, understand that you have to get like some pretty solid weapons early from either the vendor or crafting with an essence or something. So just keep that in mind. And then PoeBota actually came out with a really good League Start guide. It is in, you know, it's not in English, but it is dubbed to English, so you can watch it and you can follow it. So and it's really well made. If it was just Poison Penance brand, I would be a little bit hesitant because I don't think Poison Penance brand is super new player friendly. But he includes a very extensive poison concoction of bouncing setup that you can follow as long as you need to or as long as you want to, and it does really solid damage, going up to like 30 million DPS on medium budget, so I think it looks super good. And the last build in A+ tier, I have Corrupting Fever Kinetic Blast Elementalist. Corrupting Fever Kinetic Blast Elementalist, I watched... You know, I looked at the POBs, I looked at imexile's video on it, and I think it looks very solid as a super comfy breach farmer. The only thing that I'd be a little bit worried about is the damage if these breach monsters are very tanky. This could pose a problem, but it's not a situation where you're going to die because they're too tanky and you don't do enough damage. The build looks extremely tanky with 75/75 block, spell suppression evasion, massive ES pool. So you're definitely not going to be dying to these monsters, but they might be dying a little bit slowly, if that is the case. So I think it looks really good. If I were to do T17 strong boxes or something, this looks like an amazing build for that. It looks very comfy. The T17 boss will take a little bit of time to die until you get to like high budget, but it does look a very, you know, very comfy farmer for that content. It is also obviously solid for Legion and Breach and stuff, but I think in content that requires you to be very tanky, I think it excels that. So I do recommend that. So moving into the A tier, I'm going to cover some of these builds quickly. Hit-based Viper Strike with the Mamba. This is what Ruetoo has cooked up instead of Smite from last league. This build looks like it does a lot more damage and is a lot more comfy to play than Smite early. The AoE is significantly less than Smite. I will say that. The DPS looks very good though, and he did mention that he recommends going to Smite of Divine Judgment later. Not having a mercenary is not a problem because his Smite is cold Smite. It's cold scaling instead of lightning, so the Doriani Merc was never a consideration anyway, so it should perform just as well as it did last league. So it should be pretty solid, and I recommend checking that out and, you know, following him for that. And I heard Tai Killer might be playing this build as well, so you could watch him. All right, going into Exsanguinate Minds Trickster. Exsanguinate Minds is an amazing mapper. It was incredible last league with T16.5 memory maps, doing like 4 risk content. Even though the maps were excruciatingly hard, it did not matter because Exsanguinate Minds just clears off screen. You can sit off screen, throw your mines, and it just kills the whole map. And it doesn't even matter if, you know, normally for a T17 farming build, you want to be able to kill the map boss and be tanky enough to tank those attacks or kill it faster than it can do an attack, which could pose a problem for like Exsanguinate Minds on a budget or any other build really, right? But for T16.5, you know, memory maps, there is no boss really. There is a map boss, but it's much less difficult than a T17 boss, so it's perfect for that content. So was KB. KB is going to be amazing at that as well. So if we're talking like T16.5 breaches, that's why these map blaster builds might turn out just being so far above everyone else if the breaches are actually not that crazy difficult, like Exsanguinate Minds, KB, Kinetic Blast of Clustering, Man, right? I think those builds might turn out being extremely far ahead of other builds if that content ends up being better than most. Oh yeah, also Exsanguinate is an amazing bosser. It does require a bit of currency to get to the point where it's doing uber bosses compared to maybe Archmage or something, but it'll be very solid. I think if you're getting into this build, it's not as much the bossing that you care about, but you care about bossing and mapping, and I think it's a perfect mix of those two. Fearless Dumbo makes really good build guides, so I recommend checking him out. Lightning Arrow Elemental Hit Deadeye is the next build I have in A tier. The build is obviously squishy. but it is easy to play, easy to league start, does exactly what you want it to do, fast map blasting, and does very solid damage, but obviously it is squishy. So if you're getting into that, you know what you're getting into. Poison, ranged animate weapon. This is probably going to be the strongest breach minion build in my opinion. If you go look at the build guide, you can kind of see what that gameplay is like. I looked at quite a few minion builds. I'm not a minion player, so I do apologize if, maybe I don't have a correct understanding of how minion builds work or, what the best minion build actually is. But this is just from what I could tell from gameplay that I watched. Poison animate weapon looked very solid for breach and pretty solid for bossing as well. And it is what HelmBreaker told me that he recommended as the top minion build for this league, at least for league start. But speaking of minion builds, Holy Relic is also really strong. It does look like it requires a bit more startup cost than other minions, but most people that love Holy Relic know exactly what you're getting into. Once you get to a certain level of budget, the build starts to become super, super smooth and super good at T17s with like a Svalin setup and stuff like that. I just think it might have a small issue early compared to other minion builds getting up and running, but I do recommend checking out Balormage's guide. It did get buffed this league, so it's much smoother to start than it was before, so that is important to keep in mind. Now, Power Siphon of Archmage Totems. If you're a totem enjoyer, I think this is probably the best totem. I have it far up here because, people really enjoy totem builds. I think this is probably the best totem build currently because of breach. Now, Toddy came out with pizza totems, and he has his Stormburst totems from last league. But I feel like when it comes to clearing breach, Power Siphon is going to be stronger, even if it does a little bit less damage than maybe Pizza Totems, and definitely a lot less damage than Stormburst, so that's why I have it up here. I have it here for now. I might remove it if Palsteron doesn't end up updating it. I'm pretty sure he's updating it though, and I will have that here when he does. The build easily reached about 10 million DPS even after the nerfs, and I think it'll still be easily able to reach like 8 to 10 mil DPS now, and that'll be no problem. And speaking of Palsteron's builds, I know I don't have Kinetic Blast of Clustering here yet. I will have it later. I'm waiting for Palsteron's build guide to come out, and I will add it to the sheet. So if there's something you don't see here yet, it's because I have not watched the build yet, and I will add it as soon as I do. Like, for example, Venom Gyre. I've had a lot of people tell me about deck stack Venom Gyre. I do need to still look at that some more and add it to the sheet. I will have them added later. I'm just kind of like, this is like super last minute. Everything's like last minute for me, so I apologize for things not being like updated earlier. But anyway, moving into B+ tier. Explosive or Ballista, still good, still solid. It did get nerfed slightly in the early game. In the end game, it is barely a nerf, but in early game, okay, not slightly. The early game, it's definitely going to hurt a little bit, but the build still looks fine if you enjoy the build. Bleed, Retaliate, Gladiator still looks super solid. I would have it higher, but it just takes a lot longer for the damage to really ramp on Bleed, Retaliate, but Goratha makes a super solid build guide. You will eventually reach like 20 mil, 30 mil DPS, pretty massive power spikes with Ryslotha, with getting a good rare weapon, getting clusters put into the build, and it is by far probably the most comfortable build on this list to play in terms of tankiness, but the playstyle is not the most comfortable for some people. So I recommend checking that out. I feel like if you enjoy Righteous Fire or those types of like AFK gameplay, just being super, super tanky and just being able to complete the content, at a comfy pace without worrying about dying, this is definitely a build for you. Flicker Strike Champion, MageFist looks like he's switching it up, maybe going into some new tech like Madness tech with the Bloodlines Ascendancies. Looks like a pretty solid league starter as usual, so I do recommend checking that out if you enjoy Flicker Strike. I mean, if you're a Flicker Strike player, there's no debate for you guys anyway, right? You're going to MageFist. So, and then at the bottom of B+ tier, I have Archmage Ice Nova. I made the PUB for this build for this season because there wasn't an update for 1 year, and people kept asking me, Sushi, where's the Archmage update? You always play Archmage, but there's no build guide in the past year for Ice Nova, Katava's Thirst, and so I made it, okay? I might have a build guide out tomorrow. Archmage Ice Nova did get nerfed by half, but it's still overpowered. I would actually place it further up, even possibly into S tier, but I think I'm just super biased because I'm an Archmage one trick nowadays, so I'm not going to put it higher. But it does extremely solid damage on a budget, exceptional damage when you actually put like 5 to 10 divines into it, and then over the top damage once you get to like, uber farming and stuff. So keep an eye out for that build guide if you do want to follow that. Obviously, even though I am biased and want to put it higher, I do think it belongs, not super high up because it is a clunky build. And I don't want to bait anyone into something that they don't know what they're getting into, because Archmage is not a super smooth build. It does have a bit of clunk to it. There are buttons that you have to press. There are conditional damage that you have no control over if you're automating it. Stuff like that. So that's why I have it this low. Anyway, B tier builds. I'm not going to go over B tier builds because they're not totally updated. They're basically builds from 3.26 that I haven't looked into a lot, but they were in B tier last league, and they haven't gotten any significant buffs whatsoever. Not really any crazy changes, although minions might have been changed quite a lot from the Bloodlines Ascendancies, so I might be moving up minions, but I'm not going to go over the B tier builds. Besides, RF Chieftain is a solid B tier build every league because it is an amazing build guide. I mean, Pohx makes probably the best Path of Exile build guide out of all creators, and a lot of people play this build every single league, no matter the changes, no matter how underpowered it might be to other builds, but because they know no matter what, they will have all of their questions answered. Any issues will be addressed in the FAQ or like by asking the creator, and it has like kind of stood the test of time. So if you want to play RF, you always know that you have Pohx to look at for a guide. So I have it here. Obviously though, I am just worried about these B tier builds, because if breach is really difficult and it's like not easy at all to do on like 1 mil DPS or something, I think these builds in this B tier are going to have a lot of issues, like RF Chieftain. If you can't just explode the entire breach and you suddenly have 3 or 4 beefy breach monsters surrounding you, passing you back and forth, you know, there might be some issues. So either way, guys, this video's gone on forever, but I want to come out with it even if the sheet is not totally done, but I will be updating it as the day goes on and tomorrow, and I will see you at league start. Bye-bye.